Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, habati fillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hayyakum Allah. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, accepts our good and forgives our evil and protects us from kulli su wa makruh. May Allah bless us all with ikhlas, with thabat ala sunnat nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah rectify our condition and affairs, increase our rizq, and bless us to be of those obedient slaves of His subhanahu wa ta'ala, adhering to the book of Allah and the sunnah of the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And may Allah tabarak wa ta'ala forgive us all of our many shortcomings with regards to reading and reciting and practicing and implementing His book, the Quran. Habati fillah, this will be the final lesson, I believe, in the series, Rifqan, gentleness, Ahlul Sunnah with Ahlul Sunnah. And in this, we've actually finished the actual treatise, Rifqan Ahlul Sunnah bi Ahlul Sunnah. But at this stage, there are some important issues that Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad, he elucidated on in other treatises of his that were amended to the translation of the text. So Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad talked about a very critical issue that we deal with, unfortunately, mainly in our Salafi communities, and that is the bid'ah of testing the people by individuals. So that means testing people by saying, hey, what is your position, for example, of Abu Taymiyyah? What's your position on Abu Khadija? What's your position on this guy or that guy? And if you say the wrong answer to the questioner, then they make al-wala wal-bara based on that. They make their love and their hate based on that. If they're a supporter, for example, of Abu Khadija or something like this, who is the head of Salafi publications, for those who are unaware, that people will make al-wala based on that. If they are haters of him, then they will praise you if you criticize him. And if they are people who support him, they will detest you. And sometimes it can even get to physical confrontation. It is that level of hizbiyah that emanates from this concept of testing the people. So Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad, hafidhullah ta'ala, he says, from the reprehensible heresies is what occurred in this time of some of the people of the Sunnah, testing others by individuals, whether the incentive for the test is harshness for a person tested by, or whether the incentive, meaning the reason for it, is high commendation for another person. And we just described that if you're either for or against us, this kind of George Bush mentality, but it goes way beyond. For those who may not even know who George Bush was, he was a former president of the United States, and he made this kind of black and white scenario when it came to dealing with the quote unquote war on terror, and at the prime minister of that time, Tony Blair, who followed suit, and those evil policy pundits who waged war in Iraq and Afghanistan and devastated generations of people and crippled them in every way in their countries. So this black and white mentality is a very dangerous thing. It's very important when we look at anything, and this can be for or against you, that you want to always restrict yourself to the truth. This is what the ulama of the Sunnah call us to. This is what the Quran most importantly calls us to be on qist, be on this, being just, okay? And that we're just with one another, and we're even just with the people who disagree with us, and we're even just with people who disbelieve, and we're even just with the people of bid'ah. Yes, be just with the people of bid'ah. Why? How do you ever have a right to be unjust, to be tyrannical, to be oppressive? Justice. So Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad, he's emphasizing some of these concepts and describing and elucidating for us the importance of not just going around testing people based on individuals and personalities, groups, websites, etc. Wallahu musta'an. So he said, if the test result was in agreement with what the tester desired, meaning someone is testing you and you agreed with him, he would achieve welcoming. They will welcome him, extolment. They will exalt this person, and commendation. So-and-so is a person of the Sunnah. Why? Because he hates, what's a masjid in London? He hates Green Lane. He refuted Green Lane, or he said he doesn't go into Green Lane. So he must be a person of the Sunnah. He must be on good. Oh, he goes to Maktab al-Salafiyah, or, in Birmingham, or whatever the masjid is named, or one of their affiliates, he must be a person of the Sunnah. So this al-wala wal-bara, or bil-aks, or the opposite, okay? And this is a very dangerous concept that encroach. The only reason we're discussing this is because it came to the people of the Sunnah. The people of the Sunnah began to fall into this. Even some mashayikh, and some, and many, unfortunately, students and others began to have these concepts and practice these concepts. Wallahu musta'an. And he says, otherwise, his fortune would be disparagement. He would be considered a mubtadi'ah, and the people would boycott him and warn against him. So that means if you don't get the right answer for the right people, then they'll warn against you and they'll consider you a mubtadi'ah. So this is the what has gone spread like wildfires, unfortunately, in our communities, and caused so much fitna. It doesn't matter the locality. You can find the same scenarios and issues if you were in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia right now, or if you were in Aden in Yemen, or if you were in Philadelphia in America, or if you're in London, or if you're in Birmingham, or if you're in Croydon, you'll find these same things. Or if you're in Paris, it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, the fitna has reached the people of the Sunnah. Or in Sweden, in Gothenburg, Stockholm, you'll find this fitna, unfortunately. But it also depends on the amount of people who are aware of these issues and who involve themselves in this fitna. He says, these are transmissions from Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. The first of them is regarding declaring someone a mubtadi'ah in testing by individuals because of the harshness for them. While the last of them is regarding declaring someone tabdi' in testing by other individuals because of high commendation for them. In the words he had about Yazid ibn Muawiyah in Majmu' al-Fatawa, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said, the correct position is what the imams are upon, that he is not given love, nor is he cursed. With this, then, if he were a sinner or an oppressor, then Allah forgives the sinner and the oppressor, especially if he came with tremendous good deeds. In his Sahih al-Bukhari, it was narrated from Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the first army to invade Constantinople is forgiven, and the commander of the first army to invade it was Yazid ibn Muawiyah, and Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was with him. So the obligation is adopting a middle course in that turning away from mention Yazid ibn Muawiyah, testing the Muslims by him, because this is from the bid'ah, opposing the people of the Sunnah. Meaning the people of the Sunnah, they gathered together and said, hey, don't do this. This is the mawqif Ahl Sunnah. Mada? Mawqif Ahl Sunnah, the position of the people of the Sunnah. He said, likewise, is differentiating amongst the Muslim nation and testing it with what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not command. Did Allah subhanahu, do we have anything in the Quran or the Sunnah saying that you must be with Shamsi in London, or you must be with Troyd in Canada, or Ulum in Canada, their du'at, or you must be with the Sa'afika, or the ones who oppose that ruling, or you must be with this one, or you must be with that one, these groups and that groups? No, because again, we are restricted and we are ordered to follow the nas. We're ordered to follow the book and the sunnah and the haqq. The haqq is always our guiding meter. It doesn't matter if all your friends are enjoyed. There's no problem with that. But don't blindly follow the people and run like a cattle every time something happens and have fear of individuals because your mokif, your position is not clear. Your position is not with the norm. Your position is not with them and so forth. But rather you want to arbitrate, you want to adjudicate, you want to stipulate. I'm getting some good words here. You want to, based on the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, likewise, is differentiating amongst the Muslim nation and testing it with Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not command. He said, it is not for anyone to appoint a person other than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the Muslim nation, calling to his way, making allies, meaning al-wala wal-bara, and showing enmity on account of it. Nor should he appoint words for them other than the words of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and whatever the Muslim nation has of making allies and showing enmity on account of them. Rather, this is from the actions of the people of bid'ah, who appoint a person or words for them by which they differentiate between the Muslim nation. So they cause tafarruq, they cause division, because they make al-wala wal-bara on things that are not based on the book and the sunnah. They say you're for us or you're against us. Brothers, turn your backs on them. Brothers, turn your backs. How many tapes have we heard this kind of nonsense being articulated, being commanded in lectures, in lecture form, in front of hundreds of people, maybe at a conference, and one of the brothers, may Allah forgive us in him and guide us in him, said, turn your backs, brothers. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Rather, this is from the actions of the people of bid'ah, who appoint a person or words for them, like slogans, by which they differentiate. One of the slogans, he's a clear Salafi. Oh, they need clarity. They need, how many times have we heard this? He's not a clear Salafi. I'm trying to think how they do it in Britain. There were some classic ways of discussing this. He's not a clear Salafi. May Allah guide us and the people. By which they differentiate between the Muslim nations. This causes tafarruq. Because how many people were declared unclear? He's ghayra wadih. He's not, I forget, they used to use a particular term. And by which they make allies and enemies according to the words or that connection. So people make al-wala wal-bara. They have hizbiyah. They have partisans. They have groups, cheerleaders. Let's look at the thing of the issue with the Sa'afaka, okay? This whole fitna that arose and how the people divided that. So we're not going into the issue. We're going into, look at the result. People made al-wala wal-bara. We still have people to today. And that was years ago that these splits took place and this controversy took place. And we have today still people asking who don't know anything about it, but who want to get involved, who want to be a part of it, who want to be a cheerleader with their side or in their local masjid or in their local study circle. And this is a fitna, and this is the fitna that Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad is warning against, which is congruent with the people of the Sunnah. And he said, so if the instructor or professor, and there's other words, like the teacher, the sheikh, the one who's teaching you, had ordered the boycott, meaning he ordered you to boycott. For example, if you're listening to me and I say, well, I want you to boycott Abu Taymiyyah, I want you to boycott Abdullah Lahmami, I want you to boycott this person, or boycott my colleague, Dr. Abdul Haq Baker, I want you to boycott this one or that one, okay? So if the instructor or the professor had ordered the boycott, the abandonment, the hajr, the dropping, the cutting off, or the isolation, isolating of a person, or similar to that, then it is to be looked into. For if he had committed a legitimate sin, he is penalized according to his sin without addition. So he's saying that it needs to be looked into. That is the point we're trying to really emphasize, that no, hajr sometimes is mashru', sometimes it's legislated. Sometimes it is legislated to not give salams to a mubtadi'ah if they are that misguided, and there's a maslaha shar'an. However, that the blind following and not knowing about these issues and then just taking a side and jumping into controversy is what is really madhmoom and what is really problematic, and no one is above looking at their dalil. So if I say a claim about someone, then I need to come up with evidence. I'm not above the law or what have you, to where I can just speak about someone and I have no evidence from the book and the Sunnah as to their innovation or the understanding of the Salafist Ummah or the Ijma', that there's no evidence. You have to have evidence for what you say and what you believe and what you practice. You cannot just blindly follow personalities and individuals, even if they're your teachers. And especially when you begin to make love and hate based on it, al-wala wal-bara, based on it. So if he did not commit a legitimate sin, it is not permissible that he is penalized with anything on account of the prejudice, ta'assub, of the instructor or other than that, meaning your teacher or your sheikh. It is not for the instructors or the sheikhs to rally the people and do what casts enmity and hatred between them. For example, how many times you get a conference in the UK and you got Salafi scholars going and you have another group of individuals warning against that. And I mean, these individuals claim to be Salafis and claim to be adherents of the Sunnah, but because they don't like Sheikh so-and-so or their Sheikh has a problem with Sheikh so-and-so, then they warn the people and cut off the people to the good. So they order, because they have respect with their hizb and their followers and so forth, and they make their prejudicial moves, and they more or less force their audience to follow them in their rulings, in their understanding, in their oppression, in their foolishness sometimes, because when you cut off people from the path of the Sunnah, then this is only foolishness. It is not for the instructors to rally the people and do what casts enmity and hatred between them. Rather, they should be like brothers, cooperating upon reverence and God and taqwa, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَعَوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, and cooperate upon piety and taqwa, and do not cooperate upon enmity and hatred. So that is coming from Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, the words of Shaykh al-Islam about this concept of gathering the people to take your position, forcing the people to take your position, forcing the people and gathering the people to have love and hate based on your statement, based on the statement of Sheikh so-and-so, based on the statement of Sheikh so-and-so. Well, Sheikh so-and-so said, okay, that's fine if you want to blind follow. And I had an excellent discussion with one of my colleagues from the UK when we were in Jeddah together. And we were both, alhamdulillah, we were trying to be vigilant. We're doing talib al-ilm at a beautiful markaz in which we both graduated. I think he graduated as well, which is Markaz li Ta'lim Kitab wa Sunnah. And I remember we became good friends. We visit each other and drop each other and go to the markaz together and different things. And we live close by. And so I remember we had a discussion, and he said, I don't have a problem with people, fine. If you know that you're a muqallid, you know that you're a person who has to blind follow. So, for example, you're dependent on the translations of Maktab al-Salafiyya or Troid or, Muslim Family Center, whatever it is, whatever organization that you follow and you, interact with and you learn from. But you're dependent on that. And then you make your position based on what they say. Okay? No problem. The biggest problem is when you begin to force others. And that's what I try to mention, to the people who I guess I would say are my students or what have you. I try to emphasize that. Don't make love and hate based on that. Rather, if you don't like the fact that I like Sheikh Ibrahim Raheli and still listen to him and still benefit from his books and so forth, and you take a position of another scholar from Ahlul Sunnah who doesn't like the Sheikh or refuted the Sheikh or feels that he has a strong evidence that the Sheikh is a mubtadi'ah, it does not necessitate that you now no longer have to cut me off or force me to have that position, nor because my position is the opposite, nor do I have to force you. You don't ever hear me saying you better like Imam Abdul Mahsen al-Abad. You better like Sheikh Ibrahim Rahili or Sheikh Suleiman Rahili or Sheikh whoever. No, but rather I say this is my position. This is what I looked into the issue, and I benefit and I understand these masail, and I don't see that so and so is a mubtadi'ah or so and so is this or so and so is that. So it's very important to have an educated position, not a position based on your desires and based on your feelings, but rather looking at it based on knowledge, So then he goes on to say, he says, if testing the people by individuals were tolerated in this time to recognize who was from the people of the Sunnah or other than them through this testing, certainly the most deserving and the foremost in that is Shaykh al-Islam, Mufti of the world, Imam of the people of the Sunnah in his time, our Sheikh Abdulaziz ibn Abdullah bin Baz, rahmatullah alayh, who died on the 28th of the month of Muharram in 1420. May Allah have mercy upon him and forgive him and reward him generously. He is the one who all people recognize for the vastness of his knowledge, the abundance of his benefit, his truthfulness, his gentleness, his tenderness, his eagerness for the guidance and direction of the people. We consider him as such, and we do not vouch for anyone over Allah. Indeed, he had a unique methodology in calling to Allah, teaching the people the good and ordering them with the recognized good and prohibiting them from reprehensible matters. It was characterized by gentleness and leniency in his advice and his many refutations in others, a correct methodology that sets the people of the Sunnah upright and does not oppose them. So I want you to, under the hadith, he's talking about Imam Abdulaziz bin Baz, rahmatullah alayh, and that his way of dealing with people, even people who differed with him, he was very knowledgeable, so his weapons were his knowledge. And he could clarify with the people. And they respected him because he was known for his gentleness, he was known for his goodness, he was known for his knowledge, he was known for his uprightness, and he was known for his generosity. So he's known for so many good characteristics, and he dealt with the people, even the mukhalifin, even people who differed with him and differed with the truth. He dealt with them in a respectful way to where they would even accept. And even the same could be said about Imam Al-Albani, rahmatullah alayhi, rahmatul wasi'ah, wa Imam bin Uthaymeen. They were all known for their ways and their knowledge and their uprightness and their gentleness in dealing with the people, even the people who differed with them. Okay, and so they had an usloob that caused people to sometimes change. How many takfiris left that methodology and they came on the Sunnah because they were dealt with gently by Imam Al-Albani and with knowledge. Rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatin wasi'ah. So he says, so a correct methodology that sets the people of the Sunnah upright and does not oppose them, encourages them and does not offer resistance against them, lifts them and does not scrutinize them. It was a methodology that gathers and does not separate, collects and does not rip them apart, directs them and does not scatter them, facilitates and does not make things difficult. How in need are those occupied with knowledge and its students of traversing this straight road and tremendous methodology because of what it contains, of the bringing about of good for the Muslims and the driving away of harm from them. So that's Imam Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad here is stating the fact that, hey, when you traverse this path of being upright and being gentle with the people, they are more open to the truth. They're more open to understanding. But if you are belittling the people, cutting off the people, making the people love and hate based on your fatwa, based on your understanding, based upon your sheikh, then it will drive the people away. You've already driven something in the road, an obstacle for the people to accept the truth, because you didn't deal with them with any kind of compassion for their guidance, any kind, subhanAllah. And I say this, and I'll say this now as well. In the West, in the dawah in the West, and I'm talking about mainly in the English-speaking countries, in the 90s and later, and probably the early 2000s, Salafi publications were a leader for spreading the Salafi dawah, okay? But if they would have held those reins and had compassion and gentleness and not fallen into Hizbiyah, there would be so many people who would have given them the power that maybe they desired or went with them. But instead, they created a climate of fear, and they did not remove their own mistakes, and they allowed for this to be to spread and be, and this al-wala wal-bara to attach to personalities and so forth. And so they went, some of them went far astray because of this. But they had an opportunity to really hold the mantle, and now you can see now that they don't have that same strength. There may be people who listen to them, they have their people, and then there's so many other Salafis that don't even respect them and don't listen to them at all. Yes, Salafis. So this is the point, is you cannot divide the people and divide the people based on that which is other than the book and the Sunnah, wa minhaj salaf, and think that you're going to have success in your dawah. So that's a part of the lesson that we want to learn from that, and that this spreading of what causes harm to the ummah obviously has no khair. So he says the obligation upon those who fell into that testing, meaning they got involved in this kind of stuff, they're the followers and the followed. You know what I mean? Those who followed them and those who were the ones who called the people testing. What's your position on Ma'arabi? What's your position on Rahili? What's your position on this one? What's your position on this one? And, and people doing this is that they free themselves from this road. So Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad is giving them the advice. He said the obligation upon them is to free themselves from this way that has divided the people of the Sunnah, because of it, they made enmity to one another. That is by the followers leaving the testing, and all whatever results from it is hatred, boycotting, and cutting off of relations, by being brothers, harmonious, cooperating in reverence and godliness, and by the following and by the followed freeing themselves from this way upon which they were followed, and publicize their liberation from it and from the deed of whoever fell into it. So Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad is basically saying, free yourself from this kind of usloob, this way of testing people and getting involved in this fitna and making love and hate and causing hatred, especially who did he write this for? For the people of the Sunnah. Gentleness, O people of the Sunnah, with the people of the Sunnah. So this, you can see how many people they split, look at how many people they take aim at their other Salafi brothers. They don't even bother with the Hizbis and deviants and people who have shirkiyat and stuff like that. Rather, they are focused on people who have the same aqidah as them and the same methodology as they have, but yet they differ over masail of how to practice it, or when to practice it, or how much. And all of these things causes great enmity between them because they don't know how to differ. And that is one of the biggest lessons we can gain too, is learning how to differ. He says, lastly, he says, from this way they followed and publicized their liberation from it. He says, with that, the followers are safe from this trial, and the people who are followed from the consequence of being followed in this testing and what results from it of harm and returning to them and to others. So that shows us how important it is to call to the book and the Sunnah, not call to personalities and ashkhas. And it is attributed to Imam Malik, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatin wasiya. And you can find this narration from some of the Salaf in a Tamheed, Ibn Abdul Barr. And he mentions a beautiful statement, which you'll hear from the scholars of Sunnah quoting this statement, which is, La yur'af al-haq bi-rijal lakin yur'af al-rijal bil-haq. We don't know the truth by men, but whether we know the men by the truth, meaning we use the truth as a way of measuring a person's degree of adherence to the book and the Sunnah. We do not say the truth is restricted to individuals, and we don't measure the truth. We don't say Sheikh so-and-so said it must be the haq. Sheikh so-and-so said we have to follow it. Sheikh so-and-so said, Da'i so-and-so said, whatever so-and-so said, the elder so-and-so said. Nah, that is not sufficient for declaring what is the truth. The truth is the truth. It's the book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa fahm salaf as-salih, ridwanullahi alayhim. Now, so being very cautious in this. Then the last addendum, he says, cautioning against the tribulation from some of the people of the Sunnah in this era of disparaging and tabdi', of declaring other people of the Sunnah to be mubtadi'ah and criticizing them. He says, close to the controversy, to the heresy, the bid'ah of testing the people by individuals is what occurred during this time of a small band from the people of the Sunnah's infatuation with disparaging and tabdi' of some of their brothers from the people of the Sunnah, and what resulted from that of boycotting, severance of mutual relations between them, and cutting off the path of deriving benefit from them. SubhanAllah, this happens in Jakarta. This happens in Addis Ababa. And I was just talking to someone who was in Ethiopia last year. And he just told me, this was last weekend, I think it was. And he was telling me about the fitna and the various fitnas going on in Ethiopia between Ahl Sunnah. Aside from all the politics, aside from all the poverty, aside from the state, the war, the Tigray, and and the Oromo, and all the other fitna that's going on, but this is between Ahl Sunnah in declaring tabdi', that you have new students of knowledge and people who studied, and they come back, they're young in age, they've memorized, they have something good, but yet they have no wisdom. They have no wisdom on how to practice these principles. So they're really lacking. They're lacking in wisdom, and that's a nux in your knowledge as well, because you need to know how to practice. So you'll see that the fitna and the folda and they're declaring other senior Salafi mashayikh there that have a history with ulama sunnah in Medina and so forth, and they're saying those guys are mumayya now, those guys are mubtadi'ah now, they're this, and it just goes on and on and on, and you can see the fitna. And the same thing goes on in Jakarta, and the same thing goes on in the US. So he says, close to the heresy of testing the people by individuals is what occurred during this time of a small band from the people of the Sunnah's infatuation with critiquing, disparaging, and declaring tabdi' of some of their brothers from the people of the Sunnah, and what resulted from that of boycotting, severance of mutual relations between them, and cutting off the path of deriving benefit from them. How many times have people say, don't go to this conference, don't go to this? So what have they done? They've cut off the path to deriving benefit from the scholars of Ahl Sunnah who came all the way to the UK and all the way to places in America, but you've cut off the khayr. He says, from that disparaging and tabdi' is what was built upon the assumption that what is not a heresy is a heresy. From the examples of that is that the two honorable sheikhs, Abdulaziz bin Baz, rahmatullahi alayhi, and bin Uthaymeen, rahmatullahi alayhi, had delivered a verdict for a group's participation in a particular issue, as they saw the benefit in that participation. From those that this group, given the verdict, did not arouse admiration in was that small band, meaning that there were some people who rejected this fatwa of these great imams. For it reprimanded that group because these imams, they criticized these particular brothers. Because of that, the matter did not stop at this extent. Rather, the blame transferred to whoever cooperated with it by delivering lectures. He would be described as a mumayya of the methodology of the Salaf, despite the fact that these two honorable sheikhs used to deliver lectures to this group by way of telephone. So letting us know that these imams, from their wisdom and their fadl, they were giving dawah on all kind of platforms. Even some of the people they gave dawah to, because that's what dawah is, were not people of the Sunnah, meaning Hizbi groups and so forth. They might do lectures by telephone and whatever. Why? Because they saw the benefit of calling these people to the Sunnah, and they did not compromise the tenets of Ahl Sunnah. Now, if you see just a da'i does anything and it's in the public eye, people will write books and author text and treatises on why this person is a mubtadi' and post and social media and this and that and the other. So-and-so is a mubtadi', he cooperates with the people of bid'ah. You see how this fitna, it just continues and it continues. But the people don't look to how some of these great imams, how they practiced, how they implemented the Sunnah, and the wisdom that they did, and the respect that they had, and that they were practitioners of the Sunnah. They were not mumayya, they were not mubtadi'ah. So why is it that you rush to take your brothers if they see a maslaha, or if there is a sharia-based maslaha in these matters? So also from that is the occurrence of cautioning against attending a person's lessons because he does not speak about such and such person or such and such group. A person from my pupils at the Faculty of Law, Sharia, at the Islamic University has undertaken the bulk of that. He graduated in it 1395, 1396 Hijri, and his ranking was 104 from his batch of 119 graduates. He is not known for being occupied with knowledge, nor do I know of him having registered academic lessons, nor any writing regarding knowledge, small nor large. The bulk of his merchandise, bulk of his dawah, is criticizing and making tabdi' and cautioning against many individuals from the people of the Sunnah. So here, Imam Abd al-Muhsin al-Abbad, we called this a slap. When we read this, when this treatise came out, everyone knew who he was talking about. He's talking about a sheikh who died, Allah yarhamuhu, named Faleh al-Harbi. And for those who are aware, the Salafi publications in those groups were big supporters of Sheikh Faleh in the day, big supporters. And it was all over their websites. And unfortunately, some of they translated how many mistakes it is, and they put it out to the people, and he made many mistakes in manhaj and was very extreme. He had a ghulu with his methodology, tajawuz al-had, So unfortunately, rahmatullahi alayhi, may Allah have mercy upon him for his mistakes, that he caused a great fitna. So here, Imam Abd al-Muhsin al-Abbad, and I don't like to use that word so much, but we'll just say he backhanded him. Whap! He slapped him in his place. Because he talked about his grades. He said, you weren't even the greatest student. And then, after you graduated, we only know of you, jarh wa ta'dil, what you say. We don't see any lessons from you. We don't see any teaching. And I can bear witness that when I was in Medina, when the sheikh was active, Allah just favored me not to actually sit with him, because I tried, when I first got to Medina, I said, where does Sheikh Faleh teach? And they said, well, he doesn't teach. He just has private gatherings in his house. So, people who are kind of supporters of espouse from the West, and then, from around the world, others, communities, Algerians and others, would go to his house to hear him criticize people. But it wasn't lessons. So I was like, I'm going to stick with Imam Abd al-Muhsin al-Abbad. I'm going to stick with Sheikh Ibrahim al-Rahili. I'm going to sit with Sheikh Suleiman al-Rahili because they were regular and they were available. So that's what I did. I said, oh, Sheikh Ali Tuwaidri's got something. Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Aqil has in his masjid. These mashayikh were available and they were teaching. So that's what I sat and that's what I did. And then the only a couple of gatherings I had with him, may Allah forgive us and him, that's exactly what they were. It was like, literally, he came to Hayal, and there was other mashayikh present, and literally for like maybe an hour or two, I hardly heard Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. He didn't say Allah said what was, he just kept saying, Sayyid Qutb said in this book, Sayyid Qutb, Sayyid Qutb, Sayyid, it was an hour and a half criticizing Sayyid Qutb, and there was hardly any Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. So you could see that present, he had a ghira for an aspect of the deen. He had a jealousy for an aspect of the deen, but he also had some extremism and misguidance, and it misguided others. And so Imam Abd al-Muhsin al-Abbad here is swap, putting him in his place, so to speak. And he did that in his book. And other mashayikh at the time, they didn't like that because they supported him. But then they all rejected him later. May Allah forgive us and them. He says, the criticizer does not reach the ankles of some of those he disparages because of the abundance of their benefit in their lessons, their lectures, and their writing. So here, Imam Abd al-Muhsin al-Abbad, he really slapped him. It's like, whap, put him in his place. How? Because he said that this guy is criticizing, but he doesn't even reach the ankles of those people he's attacking. That's what he's saying here. He's saying you don't even reach. You're criticizing Sheikh so-and-so in Yemen, Sheikh so-and-so in in Jordan, Sheikh so-and-so in Algeria, Sheikh so-and-so in this place, and this place, in India, and you don't even reach their ankles as far as knowledge. You're like it's like, when the example, and I don't know it 100, fully, but like, Muhammad Hijab sitting in the UK talking about Imam Al-Albani's mistakes. He doesn't even get that ankle. He's not even, it's like the ant talking to a mountain. So this is like, subhanAllah, what's gone with the people? May Allah help us and guide us and forgive us. I mean, he says, the amazement does not cease if a sensible person heard a tape he has containing a recording of his long telephone conversation between Medina and Algeria. The questioned one eats the flesh of many from the people of the Sunnah in it. So meaning, there was recordings. Back in the day, people would record tape phone calls, then they would spread it. And so this particular tape and some of those tapes would just be really, as Imam Abd al-Muhsin al-Abbad points out, would just be backbiting. Just be a long conversation and a recording of backbiting. He says, why the questioner squanders his wealth without right. In this tape, the number of those asked about may add up to 30 individuals, amongst them the minister, the old and the young, and amongst them a small band who are still living. Whoever was not asked about in this tape may have not been saved from it, while some of those who were saved from it were not saved from other tapes he has, which the internet information includes. So here he's just talking about how many people in one sitting. He was asked about 30 different individuals, because that's what he would do, and just criticizing. So-and-so mubtadi'ah, so-and-so is mumayya, so-and-so is this, so-and-so is this. And I recall when I was in Yemen before the war, and out of Damaj, may Allah guide us in them, and they had issued a list, and it came to us in Sana'a, and it came to this famous Masjid Sharqain. And that was the last place I saw, by the way, Najib Anjalizi. That was the last time we talked in person, I think, unless we met in Saudi again after that. But we met each other prior to that. But anyway, I remember he had just come from Damaj at that time, and we're in the masjid, but they issued a Hizbi list. Honestly, and me and some other brothers, some Americans, we were cracking up because it just sounded like something crazy, like an Islamic witch hunt. Are you serious? Is this Mickey Mouse land, or is this Donald Duck's castle? What are we talking about here? A Hizbi list. So they actually, some students or whoever had issued a huge list of individuals it was called the Hizbi list, and it came to the masjid. And so people were, we were just like, what in the world is this? So it shows you, I don't know, I don't even know what to say on that. I don't know what to say on that. May Allah help us and guide us. And it shows just how people can really deviate and get into the backbiting and bring no benefit. And they do this with their brothers. So he says, Imam Abd al-Muhsin talks about rectifying this. He says the obligation upon him is restraint from eating the flesh of the scholars and the students of knowledge. The obligation upon the youth and the students of knowledge is that they do not incline towards their criticisms and their tabdi' that harm and do not benefit, and that they occupy themselves. How many times have we told you this? How many times have the imams said this, and we translate this for you? How many of my lessons have I told you, and I said, what does Imam Abd al-Muhsin al-Abbad say? He says that they occupy themselves with beneficial knowledge, ilm nafi'ah, that returns them with a good and praiseworthy outcome in this world and the hereafter. That's what it's about. So that's what we want to see in Philadelphia. That's what we want to see in New York. That's what we want to see wherever, is that you're busying yourself with that's what's going to bring you closer to Allah. There's no necessity for you to get into the latest mistake of Abu Taymiyyah or publicize it or what you perceive as a mistake, which may not even be a mistake, and just get involved in affairs that have zero benefit for you. It's not going to bring you closer to Allah. Wala qalil. You already heard what you said. You've already made up your mind. Listen to him or don't listen to him. Whatever your position. But wasting your time and accumulating more sins and getting involved in issues that have no benefit for you. What's the position on this guy? What's the position on this guy? No, you should be working on correcting your recitation. You should be working on memorizing something from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You should be working on reading the raqa'iq, reading those things which soften your heart and bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should be rectifying and removing your sins. This is what you should be concentrating on. And ilm al-nafi, as Imam Abdul Masin al-Abbad, hafidhullah ta'ala, states. And he said in his book, Tibyan al-Kadhib al-Muftari, Hafiz ibn Asakir, rahmatullahi alayhi, he said, oh, and know, O my brother, may Allah grant us and you success to his pleasure, and may he make us from those who dread him, and meaning have fearfulness, taqwa, and are pious towards him with the deserved, haqqa taqatihi, that they have the full taqwa towards him, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the flesh of the scholars, may Allah's mercy be upon them, is poisonous, and Allah's custom with regards to tearing the curtains from their shortcomings is known. So meaning Ahl Sunnah, meaning dealing with the scholars is serious. Criticizing the scholars is serious. Even if you hear something, and even if you take a position, don't spend your time if there is no benefit. Why are people asking me about, for example, Sheikh Ali Hassan al-Halabi, rahmatullahi alayhi? If you don't want to listen, don't listen. If you take a position because you heard some other mashayikh or Ahl Sunnah who refuted him or made tabdi of him, okay, take that position. But why are you still busying yourself with this? What is the benefit? And how are you trying to convert me or convert someone else who's looked into the issue? Leave me then. If I'm a mubtadi', leave me. I don't have any problem. I don't need followers. I'm not looking for your social media likes. I never have, and that's why I have none. But the point is, ahabati fillah, why are you wasting your time? Busy yourself with those things which are beneficial and will cause you to come closer to Allah. Do not engage in those things which have no benefit. And what does Allah say? That says exactly, basically what I'm trying to say. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's best from the Quran. Qala subhanahu wa ta'awanu 'alal birri wa taqwa. Cooperate in God-fearfulness and righteousness. What is this God-fearfulness that we're talking about, this taqwa? That means adhering to the commands of Allah and avoiding his prohibitions. That means putting a hedges, putting a barrier between you and your sins, or you and hellfire, which is the same thing, more or less. So do not cooperate in enmity and hatred. What is this enmity and hatred? How would we see this in this scenario? Well, if you're spreading the mistakes and you're continually talking about someone who died, who left a plethora of knowledge, how many books? For example, let's just look at the numudij of Sheikh Ali al-Halabi. Look at how many books of the Sunnah this man made tahqiq. He verified, this authenticity, or looking at the ahadith in it for their soundness. And how many books has he explained, and how many durus musajjala, durus that are, lessons that are recorded. Sharh Sunnah, I benefited immensely from his explanation of Sharh Sunnah li Imam Barbahari. I did the whole thing probably a couple of times when I was in Yemen. I was listening in the tape, okay? As well as Imam Fawzan's. And his book, how many benefits do these ai they leave behind? And yet you have nothing to show, and you're going to busy with that? Fine, if you think he's a mubtadi'ah, la bas. That's your mokif. That's between you and Allah. But don't gain sin because of your position, meaning that you're spreading and you are constantly talking about it and you're testing the people based upon it, because you only destroy yourself. You don't destroy the sheikh. He's left behind what he's left behind, and he passed on. It's finished for him, except for, as the Prophet ﷺ said, when a person dies, his deeds cease except for three. صدقة جارية العلم ينتفع به وولد صالح يدعو له. That صدقة جارية, continuous charity, knowledge that is benefited from. Well, he's definitely left that. And a righteous child that supplicates for him. And I think the sheikh had children, I don't know, and then probably supplicate for him. He left enough students around the world who supplicate for him. Rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatin wasi'ah. So that in and of itself, he's got his thing. What about you? Are you going to gain sin because you're eating his flesh because you're wasting your time? Or are you going to busy yourself with that which benefits you? Kama qala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam said. So Imam Abdul Muhsin, then he goes on to say, he said, in my treatise, Rifkin Ahl Sunnah bil Ahl Sunnah, I had mentioned a large sum of verses, Kitab Allah, Hadith, Sunnah Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa athar, narrations of the Salaf, regarding guarding the tongue against backbiting the people of the Sunnah, especially the people of knowledge amongst them. Despite that, because, these ulama who criticized it, that means they read what the Sheikh said. But yet, some of them, like especially Fareh, rahmatullahi, he, and I'm not trying to eat him, but I'm trying to give you an example, and that's why I say, may Allah forgive him, But those are things that we want to learn from, and you don't want to die like that. You don't want to die being hated by so many people, and then what you left, and you didn't take any of your positions back. You didn't remove yourself. Rather, you became, he was a Bedouin, and such a hard-nosed Bedouin on your positions. May Allah help us and forgive us and guide us. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. He said, despite this, the person who criticized, and look at this. Also, this is something noteworthy. I'm mentioning Sheikh Fareh. He didn't even mention the Sheikh by name. What does he say? And I don't have the Arabic text in front of me, but as far as they translated, I don't like the way they translated, but may Allah reward them for the job they did. They said, despite that, this disparager, meaning the one who criticized, was not amazed. Meaning, he's talking about Sheikh Fareh. Even with that, Imam Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, he kept manners for those who didn't know who he was talking about. He didn't spread their names. He didn't say Sheikh so-and-so, Imam so-and-so, because he was actually striking at Sheikh Rabi', he was striking at Fareh, he was striking at Imam Ahmed al-Najmi. This was his reply. He was fighting back, saying, no, you guys are wrong here, and I want you guys to come back to good. You guys are causing a little bit of problems. Is this what he's basically saying? It's too much. He's saying you're doing too much. Stick with your knowledge, because you guys bring so much benefit in your ilm, especially Sheikh Rabi' and Imam Ahmed al-Najmi, rahmatullahi alayhi. But they still had differences about this book. So that's how it is. So he says, despite that, this person who criticized was not amazed. Again, he didn't say, Fareh, you weren't amazed. He said, this criticized. So only those people who were privy, who knew about the fitna more, they knew who he was talking about. But a lot of, the manners, this is what I'm trying to inculcate in you. You don't always have to mention even the person you're criticizing, or the mubtadi'ah, or a person of the sunnah. You don't, this is what you'll find a lot of our mashayikh, they don't mention individuals unless it becomes necessary. And then some of our mashayikh, which is fine too, they will criticize individuals more. And that's okay. It's okay as long as it's done with the truth. That's the ibrah. And as long as there's wisdom in that. So if they find wisdom in that, them being ulama sunnah, then maybe it's aslah. Maybe it has a greater rectification effect, the fact that they outwardly spoke about so-and-so, or they've been patient with him and now they're openly criticizing him. So this is from fiqh fi deen. This is hikmah, and this is what our ulama, they have that. But I like in general that a lot of our mashayikh, they don't rush to speak about the names of individuals unless they find that it becomes necessary. And that's the thing. You don't always, sometimes you can just refute these mistakes, and especially when it comes to people of the sunnah, and then you can, behind closed doors, advise if it's a person of the sunnah or what have you. So he said, he described it, here's what he's saying, that Fareh, and described his book. He said he described it as not being fit for distribution, and he cautioned against it. They warned against it, and whoever distributed it, and warned against the people who distributed it. SubhanAllah, because they thought it was mumayya, and it was assisting the hizbis. This is what the argument. I can remember I was in Medina at the time when they were talking about this stuff. And he says, there is no doubt that whoever comes across this criticism and reads the treatise will find that this ruling is in one valley, it's over here, while the treatise is in another valley, and that the matter is just as the poet said. The eye may be denied the sun's light due to conjunctivitis, while the mouth is denied the taste of water due to an illness. As for the disparaging student statement for the treatise Rifkin Ahl Sunnah bil Ahl Sunnah, so for example, regarding the words that Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz's methodology and Sheikh bin Uthaymeen's methodology are contrary to the methodology of the other people of the Sunnah, this is a mistake, meaning that some of the scholars, some people, or students of knowledge even tried to say that Imam Abdulaziz bin Baz and Imam bin Uthaymeen made a mistake in there. They were being too lenient. They're mistaken. Okay, it doesn't mean they don't mistake. Yes, these great imams make mistakes, but this shows that a nux in this individual and their critiquing of these great imams. And here's Imam Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad responding to that. He says, so for example, regarding the words that Sheikh bin Baz and bin Uthaymeen's methodology are contrary to the methodology of other people of the Sunnah, this is a mistake, no doubt. He means they would not increase the number of refutations, meaning he wants more refutations, while they would refute the opposer. If this is correct, it is contrary to the methodology of the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, and in reality is an attack on the two sheikhs and others of whom it is possible that the speech can be said about. The reply to it is from different, I replied to this in different ways. This is what Imam Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad said. I'm going to deal with this doubt in different ways. He says the first aspect is that it is not in the treaties that Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz rahmatullahi alayhi did not increase the number of refutations. Rather, his refutations were many. So Imam bin Baz refuted a lot. Okay, there's a lot of, if you go to his Majmu' Fatawa, you'll see in the treaties, but you saw that his manners of refutation was very adabi, very good manners and good ways and ilmi and knowledge base. He said in the treaties, it has been mentioned on page 31 that where the error is clear and evident, the refutation be with gentleness, leniency, and a strong desire for the well-being of the person who made the mistake. One should turn to Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz's rahmatullahi refutations to seek benefit from regarding the way in which the refutation should be. And this is the point. And I'm telling you, and I've bought, I don't know if I could say hundreds, but I've bought maybe even hundreds of refutations I have from so many different scholars. That's possible. I probably have, I'm sure in my collection, if it's not in PDF form, I've got hundreds because I really used to love those kind of books. But when I look back at some of those, and now my Arabic is much stronger, and I see how some of those, the language that some of the refutations were not really ilmi, or what I can say is just like we have in the Western audience and others, you'll find a lot of people inferring all the time. This is what he means by this statement. How many times on espubs, and I'm not trying to pick on espubs, but they were the leaders in this stuff in the West, that you'll find in their translations, and they'll say, well, he means this by this. He means this by this. He means this by this. So they infer so much to what a person says instead of inferring the khair, instead of having a wajh of goodness for what the person said, especially if it's a person who's known for calling to the book and the sunnah. Instead, they say, well, Abu Usama means this. So-and-so means this. Lahmami says this. So-and-so means this. Abu Taymiyyah means this. Abdurrahman Hassan means this. Abdul Wahid Stevenson, he means this. Muawiyah Tucker, he means this. Ismail Beaumont, rahmatullahi alayhi, he means this. This is the way you'll see in a lot of their writings. May Allah forgive us in them and guide us in them. And that's not being academically honest. And I tried to be, in the refutations that I've done, to not follow that way. Of course, you're not going to give the mubtadi'ah the husn adhan. You're not going to do that. But I tried to be as academic as I could when I talked about Yasser Qadhi in my PhD thesis. I talked extensively about Qadhi and some other people. And I mentioned, and I used the knuckle. Yasser Qadhi says this in his writing. Yasser Qadhi says this in such and such. And I tried not to say he means this, but I would use what he says in relation to the other statements he says to support his meaning and the context. So that way I'm not taking what he says out of context. And even Yasser Qadhi himself says I hope that people don't take my statements out of context. More or less, he says this in one of his writings when he wrote his refutation of the Salafi dawah. Okay, I forgot what it's called, Salafi something. And so you want to be just, even with the mubtadi' dal mudil, even with the innovator who calls to misguidance, and he's misguided. He's misguided. He calls to misguidance, but be just with him. Don't lie. Don't exaggerate. Try to stick within the bounds and let the truth speak for itself. This mubtadi' is a sick cancer because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cancer, sickness, AIDS, wickedness, devilishness, it's all there, okay? Back it up, support it, but don't tajawuz al-had, okay? He goes on to say, the second aspect is that I do not consider mentioning, Sheikh bin Uthaymeen's methodology, rahmatullahi alayhi, regarding refutations, because I do not know of his writing, small or large, by him regarding refutations, meaning he doesn't know of a lot of refutations, rudud, that Imam bin Uthaymeen did, although he has them, of course. And, a lot of times it might be in his tapes and stuff, especially now more of his stuff is printed. They go back and they produce new books all the time. I wish I had every single one of them. If anybody knows of any new ones in the past, probably 2 years, I need them. I don't even need to ask about them. Just send them to me and I'll pay you. So he says, I asked one of his pupils closely connected to him about that. And he informed me that he did not know of anything by him of refutations. That does not defame him because he was occupied with relaying knowledge, distributing it, and writing. Even though he refutes a lot of the mubtadi', their ideology and their concepts, but maybe not individuals as much. And Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad is articulating something so important that I want you to leave with. And that is it's not necessary for every one of the Sunnah to speak about an issue. If someone has refuted someone and it was based on the truth or what have you, that's sufficient. It doesn't mean every sheikh has to be asked about it. Every sheikh has to get involved in it. Every sheikh has to make his position of it. SubhanAllah. And we don't see that even from our scholars. I promise you. How many of our mashayikh don't ever get into any of that fitna, and Allah is raising them, and they're still known as people of the Sunnah. No one would dare criticize them as a person of bid'ah. Let me give you a name. Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, who spends a lot of time explaining books on all kind of sciences, but a lot on the heart. And a lot, what we call raqa'iq, heart softeners, books of Ibn al-Qayyim, books of Imam Sa'di. Right now I'm listening a little bit here and there, tuning in. He's doing a book of Imam Sa'di in fiqh, okay? Mudarik Salikin. And so you see that Sheikh Abdul Razak is busy. He just busies you with ilm. He'll slap the mubtadi'ah, but he'll slap their aqeedah. He'll slap their minhaj, but he doesn't really I've never heard him in the years of listening to him and having studied with him. I can't ever recall him mentioning an individual. Doesn't mean he hasn't, but it just shows you that's not his usloob. And no one dares talk about and say he's not a Salafi, he's not this, he's not this. So not everyone needs to get involved in that, and not everybody emphasizes that or specializes in that or even wants to. And this is also a beautiful lesson I could talk about that I learned from Sheikh Ibrahim Rahili, no matter how much you hate it. And I learned this in his PhD thesis. We studied his book. It's 2 volumes. It's called Mawqif Ahl Sunnah min Ahl Bid'ah wal Ahwa. We did it from the beginning to the end. It was 56 lessons. And it took us, I don't know how many years it took us. It might have taken us 2 years, or it might have taken more. It seemed like it was a long time because we'd only do it once. Mawqif, I can't remember how often we did it. No, it had to be more. Maybe it was a few times a week because we were going through it. But it took us a couple years to finish his book. And I'm thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have done that with him. And one of the things he would emphasize, totally lost my track of mind, how does it relate to what we're talking about, is that maybe it'll come back to me. I lost my train of thought. Maybe I was talking too much about that history, reminiscing too much of the days of old. Let's go back to what Imam Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad. So he says the third aspect is that Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz's rahmatullahi alayhi methodology differed from the methodology of the disparaging student. and those who resemble him. Now I remember. So the reason I was mentioning Sheikh Ibrahim is because one of the things in one of his chapters, he talks about, about refutations and so forth. And he said that there's 3 conditions. Let's see if I can remember them still off cap for that you'll find with the people of the Sunnah as far as getting into refutations. One, he mentioned, is the azima, meaning that the person has the determination. They have the will to refute. And that's what you find some scholars like Sheikh Abdul Razak and many others, maybe Bin Uthaymin, and even Imam Abdul Masin and many of our mashayikh who don't write a lot of books refuting individuals or speaking about individuals, is they don't have the determination. They don't want to do that. Maybe it doesn't feel good in their heart, or they just don't want to involve in that. Okay. So one of the things Sheikh Ibrahim mentioned, and he gave us examples like Imam Ahmed, and he talked about some of the A'imma during his time. He said Imam Ahmed had this azima. He had this determination to refute the people of bid'ah and refute them directly. But other imams who were great imams didn't. So having the determination, then there is the qudra, the ability, and that is the ability either to write in writing, or the khataba, through speech. Okay, so not everyone has those abilities. Some people, they have the determination, they want to refute, for whatever reason, hopefully for the good reason, the right reason, but yet they're not good writers and they're not good speakers. Some people are good at refutations. So they're good at speaking. They give good khutbahs and they can give good lectures, but they're not good at writing. Some people are good at writing, but they're not good speakers. And maybe they don't have the azima. So this is the point is Sheikh Ibrahim was talking about this fact and these things coming together, and that you'll find this in the scholars even of today. You'll find these same traits. You'll find some of the mashayikh. I mean, look, let's give probably the biggest example. Some of the mashayikh like Imam Ahmed al-Najmi, Imam Muqbil, Sheikh Rabi', they've written extensively about individuals. They come out, they've said it in tapes, they've done lectures, they've done and written books. So for them, that is their Sheikh Abeid al-Jabri, rahmatullahi alayhi, so you'll see those who do. And then there's a lot of other mashayikh too who don't. They don't mention individuals. They'll refute his being, they'll refute their ideologies, they'll refute this, and they might occasionally mention an individual. And that comes to sometimes their azima, their determination, because they have the ability. And some mashayikh are better at writing than others. Some are very ilmi. Look at some of our mashayikh, they've written so many books. Some of our mashayikh have not written many books, and they but they have a lot of lectures, or vice versa. You understand the point. So those traits kind of, subhanallah, the time, I didn't realize the time. The third aspect is that Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz's rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatin wasiya methodology differed from the methodology of disparaging the student. So dhuhr is upon us. I need to go. I will continue after I go pray dhuhr. So probably for those who can and wish to tune in for the final to finish this book, marhaban bikum. And if not, and then so I would request that you save your questions for there, because I need to go pray. It's time to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through prayer. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So in about a half hour, inshallah ta'ala, we'll come back and finish, inshallah, for those who are able to. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.